Welcome back to the Marvel Timeline Rewatch, where we cover all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, TV shows, and one-shots in chronological order. This week we have Thor Dark World, which was released November 8th, 2013. This happens in 2013 and is directed by Alan Taylor. As always, my name is Justin with my co-host here, Jacob. Jacob, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. This forewarning, this is going to be a little bit of a struggle to get through this one. But,
God, this movie was not good.
Yeah, not their finest hour.
No, this goes back to like the Incredible Hulk bad to me.
Wasn't as bad as that, but yeah.
This is a bottom two movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know how people say top two, I'm top two, not two. This is top two, probably two.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, bottom two, probably two.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's as bad as the Incredible Hulk, but it's
so
not great.
Funny because for the longest time I always thought Age of Ultron was by far the worst Marvel movie of all time. Yeah.
Oh, that one fascinates me.
And the more that like I rewatch some of these and I'm like, no, Thor Dark World is awful.
Yeah.
Anyways. Synopsis
would be, I would almost call it Family Feud Part 2, but
all Thor movies are
all Thor movies.
Well, this would be like part 3 because of if you think of the Avengers.
Really. Yeah, we can leave it at that one. Because this one just, there's so many. I think the problem with this movie is there's so much going on at the same time that it's hard for the movie itself to focus on any one particular thing. So.
And it introduces the reality.
Yeah.
Stone.
Yep.
Not really a stone, but
not a stone yet, but yeah.
No. And they touch base on that as well in this movie about how the 6 relics, the 6 ancient relics, one of them was not a stone, one was the ether, which is the one that comes in here that it basically becomes the reality stone. How it becomes a stone, we're gonna have to watch closely on that one because I still don't understand how Thanos makes it a stone when it's an ooze.
Oh, maybe I don't know. Maybe when it's channeled, it comes together. Because like when they capture it, it's in like a cylinder type tube. So maybe you can, under enough pressure, it forms into something.
I guess that's another thing. How did the Avengers turn it into a stone? Maybe pressurizing it, I guess. But the ether does power the Dark Elves. There's a whole war between Asgard and the Dark Elves way in ancient times, again, where basically it powers them.
Yeah.
And they lost it. Asgard takes it. And there's a point where Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves, kind of performs genocide on his own people to kill the Asgardians.
He saves one ship and then kills the rest of his people to try to...
And then they go to sleep.
Yep.
Which, it kind of seems like Asgard hid the ether on Earth.
Kind of.
What? Kind of, yes. We later find out that it's not actually on Earth. But it made you wonder, like, why is Earth like this box of... This is where we're going to put all of our goods and treasures.
I had thought about that too. It was like so far in the movies, people think of Earth as like primitive beings, and like, I mean, the Kree thought it was a shithole, and Loki thought he could control Earth, like they're just the people waiting to be ruled, and stuff like that. So maybe people hide things there, thinking, oh, nobody's gonna think to look here, or these people won't know what to do with it even if they find it. So
So Thor was sent to one of the 9 realms to Odin told Loki that Thor is off restoring the 9 realms after what he did in New York. And I'm like, why did an attack on New York cause the 9 realms to not be in order?
Well, I think it more so was speaking to like restoring peace in the 9 realms. There might have been some like
animosity
in the realms that were like, hey, this is a son of Odin that went and did all of this. Like, because Loki was technically a son of Odin.
So maybe they're like worried about rebellions.
Yeah, or Loki's antics inspired other groups to maybe get up and try to go attack people. I don't know. That's a loose connection, but because I feel like that's something you're constantly doing. It's like making sure there's peace. Like, I don't know, just based on, our world history, I don't think there's ever going to be, world peace, or like at a time when all the nine realms are in cooperation with each other.
So while Loki is in chains, he says that, like, it's my birthright, and Odin interrupts him and says, your birthright was to die. And I was like, oh, that's harsh.
Yeah.
That's pretty harsh from his, what Jacob in a previous episode would say, his fake dad.
Well,
I said his adopted dad.
But Odin doesn't really, like, in this movie especially, he does not care about Loki anymore.
He's a prisoner.
Yeah.
Odin calls him a prisoner.
Yeah.
Orders nobody to go see him in the dungeon, but orders him to the dungeon for basically the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So later find out that doesn't really actually happen. So I did notice, this is maybe just a nerd in me, I don't know. Did you notice how the balcony, Thor's balcony, he looks out to Asgard, but in the background you see like the planets and how close, like how big they were. I was thinking about that. I was like, how close are those planets to Asgard when, the moon isn't really that close, but it's tiny.
Sure.
Like, are they like right up against each other? Or are these planets just that massive?
Yeah.
I thought it was
interesting. That's interesting. And I don't know if that'll ever get explained.
That will never be explained.
I often think about
Asgard's
that too. Like if you look at Earth, it takes us a while to get to the other side of the planet. So like when Thor says, "Yeah, I've read this realm of these people," I was like, "Well, how long did that take? Like, is that one planet? Is that 3 planets?" Like, and especially like in Guardians of the Galaxy as well, when they go from planet to planet, like you're just landing on one little spot of the planet. Like, there's obviously a lot more.
But
than
that's
just
like
that
the
one
whole
spot.
planet.
Yeah,
basically.
And I wonder the same thing about Star Wars too. Like Star Wars, they do the same thing. They go to one spot on a planet, and I'm like, okay, but what's the rest of the planet?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Is it just a barren wasteland?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the entire planet. This is a
exactly.
city on
This
a
is
planet.
one city on a planet. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always wondered that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jane is now in London, no longer in New Mexico.
I had a point right before that. Actually, for timing purposes, Malekith fought Odin's father. So just to tell you how old he is.
Oh, because we know Odin's been around for like
Odin's
1,000
been around
years.
for a while, but it was actually Odin's father. And based on...
So this was actually pre-Tesseract being placed in Norway.
Yeah.
Well, it had to be because that was
because Odin. Yeah. And even Odin's father didn't look like he was at the end of his life. He looked like he was more like probably middle-aged. So
this is way
like
old.
It was way old.
Okay.
But yeah, I just, for frame of reference, like this guy Malekith has been around. He's been around the block.
He's very old.
Several blocks.
Looks great for his age.
Yeah, he does. Oh, and then I had an interesting thought when Thor is on that other realm, trying to defeat the Marauders, and he fights that rock giant. I wonder if that's the same type of species that he then later befriends, like in Ragnarok. So
Korg.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah. So, as mentioned, Jane and Co are in London now. We find out that Darcy has been trying to get a hold of S.H.I.E.L.D. about what's going on with what ends up being the Convergence. Don't really know why they're in London other than they just are.
Yeah. I don't know if their research took them there because, like, when Darcy interrupts Jane, she's talking to her about the readings, but they didn't. To me,
Jane
it
is
sounded
basically
like something
like
that just
put
came
off
up.
all science.
Yeah.
In general, I don't get it, and especially like Jane's expecting Thor to come back to her, but like moves halfway across the world.
I remember why they're in London. I think Selvig was in London, and he told them, "You need to meet him here. You need to meet me here," because she said we've been chasing Eric. And then they find out he got arrested. Yeah.
That's fair.
That's what it was.
Okay.
But why she immediately goes on a date with a guy while she's there, that implies she'd been there for a little bit.
Right.
So.
Yeah, exactly. And Darcy was like, "Oh, you showered today. Like, you smell good. And like, I've been messing with your science equipment that you've basically put away forever." So that's important because they do go to where the readings are taking them to, which wasn't actually Earth. It was in between the realms. And that's where she sticks her hand in between the rocks and the ether gets stuck in side of her, which is fun. Turns out she's been gone for like 5 hours, not just immediately. And so Thor finally comes and gets to her because he went to Heimdall to see how Jane's doing, and Heimdall couldn't find Jane. So of course Thor naturally freaks out.
Yep.
And then I wonder, did the ether and then all of this Asgardian technology, is that what gave her cancer?
Well, spoiler alert, but yes. I think there's a good possibility that could be what it is, because the ether is something never designed for mortals, I would assume, to interact with. So
yeah,
it would not shock me if that's, which I don't think they really explain why she got the cancer.
they never do. No,
Yeah.
she has
She just got
cancer.
it.
And
Yeah.
Love and Thunder, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it would not surprise me if it was because of this. And then, like, also my piece was knowing that you were taken to Asgard to try to heal you from the ether. Why did you? And they touch on this in the movie too. Why did, when she get cancer, she didn't try to reach out to Thor to see if somebody in Asgard could? Well, I guess Asgard wasn't around, so.
yeah,
And then she went to New Asgard,
it's
but
kaput.
yeah, I don't know. That was just. I think they described it in the movie as like she was like, I'm just, living it out. So.
Yeah, well, I think she had accepted the fact that she was dying as
Mhm.
well. So,
Yeah.
I want to know. The Dark Elves have these orbs.
Yep.
That basically like sucks you into its orb. We've talked about the Tesseract and how it potentially sends people off. I mean, we saw that the Red Skull went off and went
Mhm.
to what was it, Vormir,
Yeah.
and all of these they get sent into other dimensions. Does this suck you into another dimension? Does this suck you into the quantum realm? Because we see this in Ant-Man, where it sends the what's his face?
Well, he's the Yellow Jacket, but I
The
can't
Yellow
remember his
Jacket,
real
yeah.
name.
We just watched this.
I know.
It sends Yellow Jacket
He later
into the
becomes
quantum
MODOK.
realm. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, he gets sucked into the quantum realm.
Yeah.
Do these orbs suck them into the quantum realm, or do they just kill them and crush them?
I don't know. Because when even if you were to crush somebody, you think there would still be something there.
Like,
But, like,
some kind
this
of
was like
noise
there was
or-
nothing there. So,
Yeah, they just literally disappeared.
Yeah.
So, something to think about. But maybe this is another way how people end up in the quantum realm.
Yeah.
All these people that were misplaced and
It's a
stuff.
good point.
So, yeah.
Oh, I did want to note, I made reference of this in the Avengers, but you see Odin's crows again when Thor comes back from fighting on that realm, and Odin has like a crow on his arm as he's watching the warriors train.
Man, that was a while ago.
Since I brought that up, yeah.
Yeah, good callback there. Yeah, so this is where, the Dark Elves, they're awoken because of Jane.
Yeah,
finding the ether.
being activated.
So
awakens
that
them.
wakens them up. That sends them to Asgard to break out prisoners.
Yeah, why they went
Right?
to Asgard? So they gave the guy I think his name is Curse. Or
Yeah.
they gave him the curse, and he becomes like this big, beefy version of
Yeah.
himself. And then he lets himself get captured so he can be in the Asgardian prison, because then he breaks everybody out as the Dark Elves are
Yes.
attacking. I think more so but Jane was there. Yeah, so I think they were coming after the ether. It would just so happen
Okay.
that Jane happened to be
Yeah.
in Asgard,
Yeah.
but that's how they snuck. Like, they snuck a guy in there so they could break people out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and fight and do all the things.
Yep.
So something worth noting here also is that Frigga, Thor's mom, astral projects. The question is, well, we likely know Loki probably most likely learned the astral projection from his adoptive mom.
Mm-hmm.
Was that her that was astral projecting and breaking Odin's orders to not go see him? Or was that Loki? Because we see Loki eventually, like, we realize that the illusion of him being okay in the dungeon was fake.
Right.
Did he, make that an illusion where she came and talked to him? Or did she actually go and see him?
I would more likely think she went and saw him.
I would think so too.
And you see that first before you know that she has those powers. But
yeah,
I would think she would do that.
And then
because she's also not afraid to break rules. Like even if Odin
Yeah.
said that, she was like a whatever.
And in the thought of talking about that, why didn't it, so she made a copy of basically of Jane for the Dark Elves because Jane wasn't actually there.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't she just do that for her too? Does she not have that much power?
It could be a limitation. Like even watching Loki back, I don't think there's a time where he makes multiple copies of himself, and he changes into different people. But I don't think he ever makes two. I don't know.
Yeah. So they do make it back to Earth. Thor makes it back to Earth with Jane and everybody.
Which I thought that was funny. It was like the way that they broke Jane out of Asgard was like setting up a heist movie. Where
Yes,
they're like,
it was.
They introduce this person, they show what he does. They introduce this person, they show what they do. And I was like, this is so cliche. I was like, this is not a.
And I just liked
movie.
as they were like breaking out, each one of them stops Loki and is like, if you hurt him.
Yeah.
And then by the end, your Dorfin dude.
Yep.
Loki was like, well, apparently you're gonna have to get in line because a lot of people said the same thing, which was funny.
Also, how is it that easy to take down Asgardian defenses if you're the Dark Elves coming in? Like, I think like Asgard puts on a big front that like, oh, we have a huge army and we go out to fight you people. We never think we ourselves are gonna get invaded,
right?
And then
because how do you get there?
I don't know.
How did the Dark Elves get there?
They flew there, I guess.
How did the Frost Giants get there? Like,
yeah, I think it's they have this internal perception that like no one's ever gonna attack us. We're gonna go attack them. So then maybe they don't invest as much in that. I just thought it was way too easy for the Dark Elves 3 ships or 3 motherships to come in and take them out. But I don't know.
We did get a cameo in this movie. Steve Rogers ended up in Chris Evans ended up in a Thor movie.
Yep.
So briefly, mind you. So that was funny.
And also, like, Thor is such a great brother. He's like holding out hope that like Loki's going to change, and that
eventually.
He knows he's a good person, and then he just never does.
And knows that he's going to betray him.
Yeah.
And it also became part of the plan that he was going to betray him. But then Loki ends up, quote unquote, dying.
Yep.
But not dying. That never gets explained.
Yeah.
Ever.
And it's like there was a couple times when they're fighting the Dark Elves, Loki, Thor, and Jane, where like Loki sacrifices himself to save Jane. Like I think that it was one where they were throwing the orbs, and like Loki, like went on top of her to protect her, and then another time he pushed her out of the way so it would hit him instead, but then Thor like saved him. And then like at the end he, stabs the curse and then gets stabbed. But he just did very selfless things to then like betray them in the end, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And then sends Odin to Norway.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie, because he is Odin at the end of the movie, which then we see in which movie was that?
I think it'd be Ragnarok.
Was it Ragnarok?
Yeah,
we finally see him in Ragnarok as Odin himself.
And then he passes away, and
yeah, all the things happen in
All
Ragnarok.
the things.
So yeah, I mean, then we get to London, and I just want to know how a coat rack is that worthy of holding Mjolnir, because he just clips Mjolnir onto the coat rack as if.
Well, it went back to the discussion we had in the first Thor movie. It's like, is it heavy or is it like?
Yeah. Is it actually heavy, or is it just like a sense like?
Yeah.
You have to be worthy to be able to pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't.
Because it didn't like crush Loki when it held him down.
Right.
More like it didn't take the whole coat, like the coat hanger down when it hung it up there. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Another thing that just is going to go on without ever being explained.
Always going to bother me forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The whole fight at the end there with the Dark Elves and Thor, which speaking of the crows, they come back
Yep.
because they fly from because of the convergence. They go from like literally from the bottom of
Yep.
the ground up, and then I think Eric Selvig actually makes a comment about it, about that, how that's mythology right there, and
Mm-hmm.
like everything is coming together with the convergence, and because
Yep.
he's really big on the mythology
Yeah.
there as well.
Yeah. And another thing that I thought was interesting about Eric is you really get to see the effects of Loki's control that he had on them. Like you see it a little bit with Hawkeye and Avengers, but then you really see it with Eric. Like it sent him down a path and
Yeah.
like literally lost his mind.
Yes.
So
Yes, he became crazy. I didn't like how Malekith didn't really. I feel like didn't use the reality portion of the ether
yeah.
to his full advantage. Like we see Thanos really screw with people
Mm-hmm.
with that reality stone, both collecting it and like getting the Tesseract from Loki and Thor and all of them. They made it seem like the ship was okay, and then turns out it's actually like complete ruins. I thought that was he didn't really use it the way, there was no craziness, like he didn't create like a different reality for Thor and all of them. He just basically became this like dark tornado.
Well, and I wonder too if like he didn't understand the full scope of like what it was. Like to
Yeah.
Malekith and the Dark Elves, it was the ether, but to Thanos, it's the Reality Stone. So like
Yeah.
maybe those two just didn't,
Maybe.
or maybe Malekith just understood it as having those powers and didn't know to do other things. I don't know.
Yeah. So either way, they destroy the alien invasion. Where was Shield this entire time?
Yep.
Um
I would also say this is a poor setup for an Infinity Stone because like for it being the Reality Stone, like you were saying, it did nothing with reality.
no.
Like even when it affected Jane, like it wasn't like it made a different reality. It was that she went to a different realm.
Yeah. Even when
Like-
they're talking about it in Endgame, they're like, "Oh, well, there's Jane and the ether, and it's a stone, but it's not really a stone." And
Right.
it doesn't really. Yeah,
It was
doesn't really do
very
anything.
poor
Like,
setup. Like the Tesseract, you knew it was a space stone because
for several
it opened a
movies,
portal
yeah.
and it did those things. The Mind
The
Stone
Mind Stone's obvious.
and the Scepter, it controlled people. Like
And this was the third one that we've seen
Mhm.
now. And
Yeah.
it didn't really do anything. This was the one that I think when you go back and you're thinking about the six stones, you're like, what's the sixth one? And
Yeah.
you're like, where did this one come from?
I
And most people actually, I think, probably think that it just came from the Collector. If you don't see the post-credit scene of this,
Yep.
they just like, oh, the Collector had it. It never got introduced, but it did get introduced.
Yeah.
They just did a terrible job of actually introducing it.
I remember watching this for the first time. It never dawned on me that was an Infinity Stone because
Yeah.
it doesn't look like one. It
If you
doesn't act
missed
like one.
Odin's 5 seconds of talking
Yep.
about how the 6 relics and,
Yeah, and
that
he
this
doesn't
is
call
one
them
of the stones.
stones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You missed that Easter egg.
And then like even watching Infinity War when Thanos is assembling all of them, I did not think it was unplausible that the Collector would just have a stone. Like
yeah.
meaning the Reality Stone. Like
Yeah.
you were just saying, like it didn't seem out of the realm of possibilities that he had found a stone
Right.
and that's where it was. Like
Right.
so yeah, that it was a very poor setup for that stone.
I agree. So at the very end here, Thor goes to see Odin and talks about how like Earth really needs protecting. We saw what happened with New York. I need to be there for Jane, blah blah blah. Which later on in Love and Thunder, spoiler alert, we find out they have this whole tumultuous relationship back and forth of who broke up with who, which is funny to me. Odin says, yes, let's go ahead, go take care of Earth, find out it's Loki. Loki just doesn't want Thor around anyway, so
Yeah.
that checks out. So Loki is alive as Odin, basically sends Odin off to Norway to retire. Why Odin couldn't come back, I don't understand.
that's what I'm hoping when we go back and watch like Ragnarok that gets explained a little better, because I was thinking about that too and I was like, I don't know why Odin didn't put up a fight or like what really happened that sent Odin there.
I know
so.
I know he was wanting to give Thor the keys of the kingdom,
But why
but,
would he
like,
settle for Loki? Like
you-
that didn't.
but like I don't know what happened there.
Yeah. And it wasn't explained in that movie.
Maybe
Like,
we'll find out in Loki season 2.
maybe because
Probably
I
not.
mean, it was just at the end of this credit scene, you can tell that it's Loki instead of Odin, and then
Yeah.
you're like my first impression was, oh, he killed Odin, but then it's like,
Yeah, we find out
but did he
Ragnarok
really?
that he
Like,
didn't.
yeah.
So post-credit scene, the Collector appears and takes the ether from Thor.
Well, he takes it from
the
Megan
other
Sif, but
Asgard. Yeah. Takes it from the Asgardians. Where this is where Thanos actually gets it, and we see this later in Infinity War.
Yep.
But the Collector says 1 down, 5 to go.
Yep.
So the Collector is collecting the stones.
Yeah.
Or at least appears to be now.
Yeah.
There is a second post-credit scene. Thor shows back up to Jane's apartment in London, and they just immediately kiss.
Yep.
And a monster chases a bird. So, where was Stan Lee?
So I had this noted. Let's see. Oh, Stan Lee was another mental patient in the hospital with Eric when he was explaining what the
Yes.
convergence was.
Yeah,
So.
and yells when he said,
Can I have my shoe back?
Yeah, he says, "Can I have my shoe back?"
Yeah.
I thought that was funny too.
Yeah, Stan Lee's cameos are getting shorter and shorter. Like, I feel like as we go on, they're just little, like, 10-second,
I mean, they're
15-second
always
blurbs.
pretty short.
I just feel like in the first couple movies, he was in there. I don't know.
I mean, he had little one-liners.
Yeah.
Tony thought he was Hugh Hefner. Tony thought he was the one.
David Letterman?
No, not. Was it David Letterman?
Was that the first movie? Oh, no, the first.
He thought he was the other guy.
Yeah.
God, cannot think of the life of me remember his name, but Tony gets him confused with 2 different people at 2 different times.
Yeah, the first one was Hugh Hefner. The second one was David Letterman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the Hulk, he drinks the soda and like breaks out.
It wasn't David Letterman. It was Larry King.
That's who I was
That's
thinking.
who
I was
it
like,
was.
David Letterman's
Yeah.
definitely right, but I'm not
No.
gonna go with that.
Larry King. Yeah.
Let's see, Captain America.
He was the general.
The general. I thought he'd be taller. They're all short.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just coming off like Avengers. He was just in like a rolling shot.
I think his
And-
longest one, honestly, was Endgame, where he was like, "It's love and rock and roll" or something. Like he's driving away or something like that. I think that's
Could be.
which is his very last appearance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that wraps it up for Thor: Dark World.
Wasn't much going on here.
Not a lot. I mean, the biggest thing coming out of the Thor: Dark World movie is the ether.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters at this point. None of this storyline, other than Odin being like not where Loki is Odin, those are the only 2 things that actually matter
Yeah.
to the timeline after this movie.
Yep.
Is where the ether, basically where the ether ends up and where Loki ends up. That's
So
it.
we had an hour-and-a-half movie to explain something that could have been done in like 10 minutes.
In a short.
Yeah.
In 2 different shorts.
Good times.
Cool. Well then, this movie really sucked
Yeah.
in comparison
It
to
wasn't
a lot of
great.
other things. But
what I do
There's-
love is I think they recognize this was not the way to keep going with Thor, because Ragnarok, like especially
This
after
is
the Guardians of the
much
Galaxy
different.
movies, totally different.
much different.
Yeah.
And maybe this was an Alan Taylor thing,
It
the
very well
director.
could have. Yeah.
Because Ragnarok was much better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like there's usually like with the Iron Man movies, there's character development for Tony Stark. He's really battling through things.
Yeah.
Even with Steve Rogers, he battles through there's character development in all these movies. There was nothing in this movie.
No, and like I talked about this before, what I enjoyed so much about the first Thor movie is that it showed what Thor was without his hammer,
Yeah.
without his powers. This movie
Didn't show you
did
that.
not care. Like it was just like Thor's gonna go beat a bad guy.
Yeah.
And
Thor's got to be the hero in the
Mhm.
movie. He's going to break Jane out, defy his father,
yeah.
and try to be the hero at the end of the day. And it fails, but then he becomes the hero at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
it's typical Thor. I guess if you had to pull a third thing out of this, it's maybe this is where Jane Foster gets cancer from.
Maybe. Yeah.
And that comes way down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a while.
and they guarantee they probably were not thinking about that
No.
at this point. So
Nope.
That's going to wrap it up this week.
Yep.
Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, and share that YouTube link out with anybody that you know that does watch YouTube. If you're listening to this on a podcast app or even on YouTube, go be sure to like, follow, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and share a comment on what you think about the podcast in this episode. But until next week, have a good one.